slowed by my love for you. Always stop me going under. Follow every step I take, 'cause our walls are coming down. Yeah, you are the devil running through my mind. I can't get on your level. I swear to God I tried. I am not under your spell. Turn around and turn ahead. You cannot be anymore. Oh my God, you are the devil. Stuck in the back of my head and I'm dead. I got the devil inside me and everything I see is red. Vision's blurry, I'm in a hurry. My skin is starting to shed quick. Call up the doctor, swallow some pills. Maybe I'll wake up in bed. I'm a disaster, can I move faster? Honey, I'm off the edge. No fun is stopping me, I'm not your property. Gotta take care of that ledge. My friends are dead, I'm losing my head. I gotta get off of these meds. I am unstable, willing and able. Give you this body to pledge. Oh my God, you are the devil. Oh my God, you are the devil.
Van harte welkom bij ronde 3 van de ZWIFT Grand Prix. Vandaag trekt de karavaan naar Londen, waar we 2 rondes gaan afleggen op London Reverse. De renners die vertrekken om 14 na 8, maar we schakelen rond 8 uur over naar de livestream. Zodoende we de voorstelling van de teams kunnen meemaken. Ik ga eventjes met u nog over het parcours van vandaag. We vertrekken rechtsboven, waar u de viesgraad ziet. Dat zijn de startfans. We rijden dan in gestrekte draf recht naar beneden, waar we heel snel gaan aankomen aan Fox Hill. U ziet Fox Hill in het rood. Fox Hill is zowat de enige hindernis vandaag en die gaan we 2 maal afleggen. We gaan 2 rondes afleggen in totaal natuurlijk. 400 hoogtemeters, dus voornamelijk dus Fox Hill. Op zich denk ik voor onze 5 jongens allemaal goed te doen. Het is een scratch race. Een scratch race wil zeggen dat er enkel punten liggen aan de finish. Dus een good old fashioned normale race, laat ons zeggen. Niet te veel nadenken onderweg. Het is aan de finish dat het telt. Weliswaar gaan onze power-ups ook een rol spelen. Vandaag de feathers en de anvils. De feathers, ja, daar moet niet veel uitleg bij. Die gaan we vooral bergop moeten gebruiken. De anvils, dat is nog iets anders. Die maakt u voor 15 seconden zwaarder. En die ga je dus wel een beetje tactisch moeten gebruiken, want je gaat die boven krijgen op de klim. Dus ofwel zet je die bergaf in, ofwel spaar je die, omdat ook de aankomst lichtlopend bergaf is, ongeveer 3% naar beneden. Alleen moet je dan natuurlijk ook zien dat je niet uit de wielen wordt gereden. Dus dat is iets dat we tactisch onderweg goed gaan moeten bekijken. Ook zien hoeveel jongens dat er overblijven en dergelijke. Ons inziens denk ik dat we vandaag met ongeveer 25 tot 30 jongens naar de finish zullen rijden. We gaan het zien. Momenteel staan we natuurlijk goed voor. We staan aan de leiding. We hadden al een veel grotere voorsprong gehad, omdat we al 2 maal gewonnen hebben. Maar u weet het, de eerste keer is de wedstrijd volledig geannuleerd. Vorige keer hebben we dan op de Alp weer gewonnen, waardoor we dan toch terug aan de leiding staan. We gaan vandaag in actie schieten met onder andere Lennart Teugels, Jo Pirot, Stefan van Aalst, dat is een snelle man voor aan de finish. Jasper Paridans, een tweede snelle man voor aan de finish. En Mathieu de Kok. Normaal een sterk team, denk ik zo. Dus we gaan het zo meteen kijken. Ik kijk eventjes opzij. Nog 2 minuutjes voor de stream definitief gaat vertrekken en ik overschakel. Wat moet er nog gezegd worden? Deze ronde bestaat uit 7 wedstrijden. Vandaag dus wedstrijd 3. Wedstrijd 4 is, als ik het goed heb, binnen 2 weken ook weer. Dan is het een tijdrit. De volgende 3 wedstrijden, dus samen met deze, die gaan dezelfde weg op als de WTRL, ZRL. Dus alle mensen die momenteel kijken en dinsdags actief zijn, die gaan vandaag al een beeld krijgen wat hun volgende week dinsdag staat te wachten. En dan ook de 2 weken daarna, want dan gaan we naar de tijdrit op Watopia. Dus u krijgt altijd een preview in de ZWIFT Grand Prix van wat u dan te wachten staat in de WTRL. Mooi om te zien. Vandaag dus enkel Fox Hill, 400 hoogtemeters. Deze jongens die kunnen dat, die gaan ongeveer aan 6 tot 7 watt per kilo naar boven en zullen daar een kleine 5 minuten over doen. Het is niet aan ons om de wedstrijd te kleuren normaal gezien. We staan aan de leiding, dus we kunnen iets wat defensief proberen te rijden en te anticiperen. We gaan goed de teams in toog houden die vlak achter ons staan. En dan spreken we eerst en vooral over Coalition. Maar ook Toyota en Next zijn altijd wel geduchte tegenstanders. Als er andere ploegen gaan, dan moeten we dat tactisch wat bekijken. Want we kunnen natuurlijk ook wel punten weggeven voor zo de punten te sparen dat die niet naar onze rechtstreekse concurrenten gaan. We gaan dat zo meteen gaan zien. De renners die moeten nog 14 minuutjes wachten voor ze tekeer kunnen gaan. Ik kijk opzij. We zijn op een kleine halve minuut ongeveer van de start van de stream. Je ziet het daar rechts in beeld. Nog 38 seconden. Ik ga geregeld eventjes terugkomen tijdens de wedstrijd om op de hoogte te stellen. Hoe onze jongens het doen en zo. Ik wens jullie veel kijkgenot en laat ons hopen dat we na deze wedstrijd ook een mooie uitslag hebben gereden. Liefst en vooral op plek 1, zodoende dat we onze voorsprong nog een beetje kunnen uitbreiden. Maar dat zien we binnen ongeveer een goede 50 minuutjes, gaan we dat weten. Ik zie u graag straks weer en u hoort mij zo meteen tijdens de stream. Tot ziens.
Hello and welcome to the ZWIFT Grand Prix. This is round 3 of this ZWIFT International Elite Race Series, which quite simply showcases some of the best ZWIFT racers out there in the world. Today we head into London in a very special ZWIFT Grand Prix, which incorporates the ZWIFT Racing League, essentially the birthplace of elite racing on ZWIFT. I'm very much looking forward to this one tonight, as is the person that will be commentating alongside me. Hannah Walker, great to have you along for the ride into the Surrey Hills and the City of London. This is going to be a cracker, isn't it?
Thanks a lot, Matt. Yeah, I'm very, very much looking forward to this one because it's going to be fascinating to see, first of all, how open the race can be and the third round can be, and of course the attributes that the riders have. It can suit a lot of different types of riders, but crucially the community who will be watching on round 3 here ahead of their racing league on Tuesday to see how can they learn from these elite Zwifters here. So I'm curious to see how it gets on, but I'm very, very much looking forward to it.
Exactly, and of course the ZWIFT Racing League has been around for a very long time indeed, and as you say, this is round 3 of the ZWIFT Grand Prix, but as you say, incorporating the ZWIFT Racing League. So as Hannah was saying, on Tuesday we'll have all of the ZWIFT community racing the exact same route, the exact same power-ups as well. And the course that we are facing today is just for the men. We've got the women in round 3 next week. They'll be heading into Glasgow Crit City on an evening of their own. But today is about the men. It's a scratch race, so no points on offer along the way. But it is a very important, very intriguing course. It's been raced on numerous occasions, but this being the London Reverse Loop, or the London Loop Reverse, we actually descend the famous Box Hill and ascend the slightly less famous, but equally as intriguing Fox Hill. There is the profile. As you can see, it's a rather up and down, rather pointy affair. We start off just near London Bridge. We head through the underground, up the climb of Fox Hill, descend out the other side. That's where we get the Anvil power-up, more of that later. Pass through the finish line. We'll get the bell lap, pick up a feather power-up, which no doubt the riders will use strategically on the next climb. Another Anvil power-up over the top, and then we head back into the streets of London. Total distance, as you can see, over the 2 laps, 29.3 kilometres, with a not insignificant elevation gain of 402 metres. And I do totally agree with you, Hannah. We've seen multiple races on this course before. It is, I think, arguably one of the most open circuits. And I think given the power-ups that we have on offer, which I'd like you to explain in a bit more detail, especially the Anvil, this is going to be an intriguing one, isn't it?
It's going to be very intriguing, and I think this is a race in a round in which teams have had to strategically decide which riders do they want within their roster. 16 teams, 5 riders each, and then of course you add in those power-ups. There's 2 Anvil power-ups that the riders have the opportunity to gain at the top of the arch of the Fox Hill, and of course that one is event only, so there's no way you can try and practice having that power up when you want to hop on Zwift to do a recon of London Loop Reverse. It makes you heavier. It only lasts 15 seconds though, and it's had a slight change from when it was first introduced to Zwift, because previously in its first iterations you'd have 50 kilos added to your weight, and that would be a blanket addition to all riders, but now it's a percentage of your body weight, so it certainly makes it more fair across the board, as opposed to the lighter riders. They had a big advantage, but crucially knowing when to deploy this power up is still going to be beneficial, because if a rider has a big acceleration, gets to a high speed and then activates that power up, it's going to have a bigger benefit on those riders on the descent. And then of course the featherweight power up, we all know it reduces your weight by 10%, again lasting for actually a little bit longer, 30 seconds that one.
Yep, intriguing the way that these will be deployed. As you correctly said, we don't see the amble very much indeed. It's in game, and I certainly don't think on the race we have seen it in the past, it's not been used on the descent of Box Hill, that's for sure. I think I'm right in saying that. I've no doubt those of you in the comments on YouTube will tell me I'm wrong, but of course, well, we'll have a look at some of the riders in a minute, the field that you've just talked about. But before we do that, Hannah, I think it's important that we check in with our resident commentary expert and, of course, Zwift racer extraordinaire, and a massively important part of our Zwift community who knows the Zwift Racing League inside out. It is Mr. Nathan Guerra. He's got 8 minutes to go before the race. Nathan, firstly, how are you, mate? And secondly, what are your thoughts on the course tonight?
Yeah, last race, I actually before the race did a little old man Guerra and and blew a disc out, like hurt a disc a little bit. I've been recovering, so we're just here to get some points for the team. We'll see how we go up the hill. Pedaling's a little difficult at the moment, but we'll go as good as we can. But as far as the course goes, Fox Hill's a tough climb. It's a punch in the face. It's a little shorter because it's steeper up front. I think that we're going to get some pretty major attacks early on. If we were going up the other side, it'd be a little bit more drawn out. But I think it's going to hit right from the get-go. But the descent, any riders come over together, you know, larger groups, it's going to neutralize things a lot. So people are going to be looking really forward, I think, to that second climb. A lot of big moves. And, man, all that's going to be going through my head if I were in that lead pack is, can we create the separation needed? Or is that descent going to make it so that we're coming to a bunch sprint? That's really what would be going through my mind.
Good stuff. Well, Nathan, you've got 6 and a bit minutes to continue your warm-up. All the very best, mate. We're watching out for you and the team as well. But Hannah, let's kick things off with the first of our 4 squads that are going to be doing the race tonight.
Let's take a look. The first team, it's that all-Belgian squad of Aber Synergy. They are currently leading the series. They're in first position, and you can see those 5 Belgians, Mathieu de Kock, Jasper Paradijns, Joe Pirot, Lennart Turgels, Stefan van Elst. And when you take a look, Jasper Paradijns, he was a former Zwift Academy finalist, but he's got a very, very explosive power and especially thrives in those 1 minute, 5 minute peak power situations. We move on to Beast Mode powered by Rose. They're 11th overall in the series. They'll be looking to try and move into the top 10 after round 3. They add in Ben Nordstrom, the rider from the USA, to what is normally an all-German squad. BL13 are 9th in the series. They've got Andy Nichols, also Iker Morel, the Spanish rider, and then the former champions, Coalition Alpha. They're sitting 2nd, led by Reese Howell, and of course they've got Lionel Vyarsin, who is a brilliant all-rounder, but actually when you take a look at their squad, they have got a squad of riders who can really deliver on a course like the London Loop Reverse because of how open it is. They've got plenty of cards to play on the squad of Coalition Alpha.
Yep, without a shadow of a doubt, they have got a strength in depth. Let's move on to sheet number 2 as we wrap through these. D-Pack Elite, sitting in 16th place at the moment, but they do have an exceptionally good team, and they'll be definitely looking to improve today. Burns, Collard, De Evola, Morgan and Pettinger, their lineup. Moving on to another new team for this season of the Zwift Grand Prix, Foudre Poncheur's Coalition, with that lovely jersey of theirs. A primarily French team, with Alex Lacroix of Belgium also in the mix as well. Again, they'll be a team that are definitely looking to move up and improve on their current position. The Hexagon team had a good race last week. They're solidly in 7th there. Watch out for Rick Ottoman. He's a previous winner of some big races on Zwift over the last few years. Has got a very good sprint on him as well. And of course, Movistar. Regulars to e-racing, of course, the World Tour team with their esports special squad. Watch out, well, for pretty much everybody, Pim van Diemen, Jimmy Kershaw and Harvey Glednes, I think, are the standout riders. But as you were saying before, this is a very versatile and a team that's deep in strength. And Movistar definitely looking to move higher than 6th place tonight, that's for sure.
Let's move on to the next 4 teams. You've got Next Esports. They're just currently off the podium in the series at the moment. 4th overall. Will be looking to try and move themselves and edge themselves closer to the leaders, Abus Synergy. But they've got the strong, powerful, wise, efficient, all these superlatives for the South African James Barnes within their squad. Also Brian Duffy, Nicky Hug, the Swissman. He was 9th at the World Championships last year. They've got Zach Nair, who's performed well in the US Elite Road Race Championships in the past, and rounding out their 5 riders, Tom Perrin, the man from Great Britain. Primo Racing Without Borders, that squad made up of 4 different nationalities: Tadej Sedar, Jakob Andersen, Moritz Loop, Stuart Miller and Kian Ryan. Restart, they're 12th overall in the series. They've got Dean Cunningham, Oliver Dowd. Within their squad, Gustav Linkvist. He's a rider who, Matt, he's not afraid to lay it down on the line. He's willing to take the risks. He didn't race 2 weeks ago on the Alpe de ZWIFT. He was racing in week 1, but watch out for him to try and take a flyer. And then Saris, 8th overall in the standings, the All-American squad. They've got Aaron Wenck within their squad. He's an under-23 rider. He's a newcomer when it comes to ZWIFT and racing, but he's proven and he's shown he's got some great potential.
Certainly, and they'll be looking to, I think, move up as well. It's going to be a competitive evening, that is for sure. Let's look at the final list of riders. Well, they're Team Castelli first on the final page, containing our very own Nathan Guerra, currently sitting in a very respectable 12th place, the primarily Italian team. Although they've given Nathan there an Italian flag. Maybe he's changed his heritage. Who knows? I like that, though. Maybe he has got a new passport. Who knows? Team Swedish Zwifters, again, regulars on the Zwift Grand Prix Circuit and the Zwift Racing League. I think their road captain would undoubtedly be Stefan Kirkmaier, the Austrian, in an otherwise all Swedish team. Toyota Elite, a very good squad indeed. In fact, the Toyota Elite team, 3rd place overall, Martin Martins. He was the man that took victory atop the Alpe de ZWIFT just a couple of days ago. Also, watch out as well for Brad Guveris of South Africa, a very, very talented rider, and a rider who does pack a big punch at the finish too. And finally, Wahoo Lecole, currently sitting in 5th place. And watch out for Bjorn Andreasen. I do really need to say that. I loved seeing his rainbow jersey on the road last a couple of weeks ago. Didn't quite like the Alpe de ZWIFT, let's be perfectly honest with you. But maybe, well, there's no maybe about it. I think he'll be looking to do a little bit better tonight. So watch out for the man in those rainbow bands. And there we go. We've got about a minute and 10 minutes. They are the riders. They are the teams to be watching out for today. Lots of points on offer. And just a reminder about that one, it's quite a linear, simple point scoring today. 80 points for the winner, down to 1 point for 80th place, assuming, of course, that everybody finishes. So given that points distribution, Hannah, again, it's all about packing as many riders into the top. So winning the race individually, great for your Palmaras, but a reminder, this is all about the team, is trying to get as many riders into the front as possible, isn't it?
It is, and it's about that consistency. And if you can be consistent throughout, like you just said, Matt, if you win the race, but you have several riders within the top 10 or even top 20 to really score highly, that's going to be what elevates your team performance and the team overall in the standings. And certainly for those teams who are looking to try and move up in the overall standings, those who are perhaps just off the podium, perhaps just outside the top 10 currently, this is a really good opportunity for them, with it being a scratch race, to try and elevate themselves in the series standings.
It certainly will. Very good timing there. Perfect segue into the race. We are off, straight off there. We are focusing, unsurprisingly, on the man in the rainbow bands, Bjorn Andreasen. He is a very good mountain biker as well, is Andreasen. Still a young man. Still thinking back to that victory on the streets of Glasgow a few months ago now. He's going to be wearing that rainbow jersey for a fair bit longer as well. But great to see him here on the streets of London in the early stages of this race. But we're not in London for very long, Hannah, are we? It looks like one rider has just attacked off the front. Looks like that's Ryan who's just moved clear. A very, very early attack as we look at Andreasen there. First time we've seen him in his pain cave. And look at that, Hannah. He's even got a spare bike to jump onto in a worst case scenario.
That's incredible. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've ever seen a rider when they're in their pain cave, garage, wherever it might be, when they're picture in picture having a spare bike setup just in case anything goes wrong.
Yeah, well, that is a good one. I say that. I'm trying to rack my brains. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So we're going over Tower.
Ondertussen zijn we vertrokken in de rechtstreekse draf naar Fox Hill. Die zal er heel snel aankomen. Onze jongens goed vooraan. Lennart Teugels, Stefan van Aalst, Paradidaans, allemaal mooi mee.
Of Fox Hill coming up. And as Nathan was talking about earlier on, Hannah, the climb of Fox Hill, although it's an average 2.4 k's long, averages 4.3%, but there's a mini descent before it drags to the line, so the vast majority of the climb is around 6 or 7%, so it's a lot harder than it looks on paper, isn't it?
I think when we first take a look at the profile at the top of tonight's show, it's a cruel start, isn't it? Because you're only in what is London. Now we're into that underground for a short while before the climbing really gets underway, and you do have those steeper gradients, and this is where it's really going to be for those pure climbers, those who can ride at a really, really high power output for 3, 4, 5 minutes and can suffer on these climbs. And because, as Nathan said, if you are on the descent, it's going to be incredibly hard to try and shake off any riders that are with you. So it's really going to be made on these climbs, and it's a cruel one, isn't it? That little descent before the steep kicker again to what is the archway.
Yeah, it's a complex climb to get right. It's one of my least favourite climbs on Zwift because it is a hard one to judge. It really, really is. I mean, I love riding in the Surrey Hills. In fact, IRL, in real life, I used to live very near to this part of the world. So seeing it in-game rendered so beautifully is pretty special. So heading towards the climb now. After a few little tentative attacks, the bunch is all back together. Very own Nathan Guerra is comfortably in the bunch as well. There's Stefan Kirkmaier as well. Of course, is a player manager for several teams.
Ondertussen beginnen we aan Fox Hill. Zoals eerder aangehaald, een helling van ongeveer 5-tal minuutjes. Zo meteen komen we in het begin ook meteen aan het steilste stuk. U zal dan ook wel zien dat de rek op het peloton zal komen.
So much activity because, Hannah, a lot of the community who are going to be racing on Tuesday are going to be watching intently and clearly getting involved. And if you are involved, if you're watching this stream, thank you very much indeed. And if you've got the Zwift Companion app, fire it up and give these riders a ride on. There's the stats of Lionel Vujasan for us.
I think it's interesting, isn't it, that the community riders can watch these elites race. They can learn so much from how the race unfolded, where the attacks might have gone, where they've dropped their power-ups, and watch intently on these teams and the best Zwifters in the world and best esports riders in the world competing in round 3 here. And it's something that's unique. When you see there's over 2,000 teams within what is the community in the Zwift Racing League, and then to watch these 16 teams, 80 riders, all compete on the same course.
No, definitely. Well, it looks like this is a Talbot. Looks like he might have actually just flown the coupe and adapt off the front. He has is a 1.5 seconds clear, the man from Saris No Pins. So Talbot now has clipped off, gone very, very early on. This is a little bit of a surprise. Look at the power here, 399 watts. He's approaching 7 watts a kilo at the moment. So David Talbot absolutely flying on the lower slopes of this climb. And this is where, if you want and if you're feeling good, you can make your mark, because the earliest slopes, as you can see by the gradient here, are pretty steep. Max is out at about 8%, but the gap is starting to close. I'm wondering if that was just testing his own legs there. As you can just see the graphics that we have on the screen, fascinating here, because in that red section there, that's where you get most draft benefit. That's the dynamics of basically the draft within the peloton. Fascinating to see. And once you start dropping out of that red zone, that's where the elastic, Hannah, starts to just lose its elasticity. That's where it starts to snap.
You can see there's several riders, several different teams who, whilst they're not distanced totally from what is the peloton, the pack currently, there's little small gaps starting to break. And I think for Talbot there from Sarah Snowpins in the white and pink jersey, it was an opportunity just to try and stretch things out, just to try and put riders under pressure into some difficulty, and to really try and form a select group and try and do it early. You can still see Talbot sitting comfortably within the top 10, but likewise with his teammate Aaron Wenck, the German rider who you can see in second wheel here, and he's always been very attentive up towards the front, very, very closely, and he was the first rider to really make a move when we were crossing Tower Bridge.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether that was a plan earlier on, because he got off the front by about a second and a half and backed off. I think, as you were saying, it's almost as if it was a tactic to sit on the front and actually draw the bunch along rather than go solo on his own, Hannah. It's to set a hard tempo to start to make this race attritional early on, as Abuyasan again moves through to the front. Barnes as well is up there, Martins as well. Watch out for Martins from the Toyota Elite Racing. Showed everybody a clean pair of heels. We're coming up to the top of the first part of the climb now. You can just see the Surrey Hills stretching out.
They're in a hurry.
To the distance. They're in a hurry up the hills of Surrey. Thank you very much for digging me out of the hole I dug myself there, Hannah. But coming towards the top of this climb. In fact, on Strava on Zwift, the fastest times up this climb are around 3.5 minutes, so a little bit shorter than Box Hill, but I think it's slightly more complicated to climb. But some gaps now starting to open up. This group starting to thin out as we head towards the top. Turgle's now moved through to the front.
Well, this is not what I expected, I have to admit, earlier on when I was looking down at the official team rosters when they were finally submitted, and then also comparing that to the course. I thought that there'd be a much larger group of riders after the first ascent, and it would really be the second ascent where riders and teams would be, I guess, trying to put the hurt on. But these teams, they're not hanging around. They're wanting to try and do something early, really form something of a select group on the first ascent here of Fox Hill. And Coalition have come up with a duo here, Lionel Vyazin and Kaminski, the Polish rider, as a duo, both up towards the front, to try and force the pace. And that's what they're doing, but because they're putting some good riders into a lot of difficulty currently.
Yeah, they're keeping the pace high at the front there. We're almost on this, what I call a slingshot part of the climb now. We've gone over the first initial crest, which we saw in the profile, descended for about 200 or 300 meters, and now the road's kicking up. Not quite as steep, but Turgles now has used that little bit of momentum, sat perfectly within the pack, and we're now crest the climb. No King of the Mountains points, but as we go through the archway, we should get these riders getting the power-ups, but Turgles leading, and there are, looking at it from this angle here, it's quite clear, Hannah, that a lot of riders already in difficulty because they went up that climb exceptionally quickly, heading through the National Trust section. None of these riders today will be stopping off on the cafe just on the left-hand side. They'll be keeping this pace as high as they can. Now, at what point, this is the keen thing, and this is where I think our the riders who'll be racing on Tuesday will be watching keenly to see these experts when we just start.
So far so good. Alle 5 jongens goed mee voorin. En de eerste schifting is al wat gebeurd. Een goede 40 renners kwamen samen over de top. Een paar enkelingen slaagden er nog in om toch nog te overbruggen. Ik ga eens eventjes checken met hoeveel dat we exact zijn. Maar het is een 45 renners nog van de 80 die gestart zijn. Dus dat is direct halvering. Nu rijden we naar Londen en dan komen we straks nog eenmaal terug.
Part of Zwift, it's a trial and error, but we don't get many opportunities to use this particular one. It's a power-up that you want to get used to. You certainly don't want to deploy it when you're going on an uphill section, so get rid of it when you can. But what it can offer up as well as an advantage, Hannah, and it's really crucial to talk about power-ups used in this way, is an opportunity to recover a little bit, because all it's going to do is make you more efficient, and therefore you can take a little bit of a breather for the amount of time the power-up is deployed for.
and use it to your benefit. Use it to be able to take some respite or some recovery, even if it's not in a position for you to use it to attack, which some of these riders could do. You could use it towards the bottom of a descent, like we're still seeing some riders deploy their power up, and then continue that big effort once you've got a small gap onto the flats as we go back into the underground before heading back onto the streets of London City, as we see the world champion with a slight advantage off the front. But it's interesting how it's evolved, the Anvil power-up, because now I'd say it's almost this smart power-up where in the past you could use it at a very, very wrong position on a course. For example, as you just mentioned, if you used it on an uphill, it would do some detrimental effect to you. But now it doesn't work on an uphill. It just simply means that you've not used it, Matt, to your advantage. So like you just said, make sure you use it, even if it's just for some recovery, to give you 15 seconds to take your foot off the gas, to get a breather and almost recollect yourself for what's to come on the second lap.
Yeah, definitely including this little foray into the underground station, and that's Nichols of BL13 powered by Level Velo, who's on the front there, gained a little bit of an advantage, used the Anvil power up to give him that extra little bit of momentum heading into this really tricky section here. We've got a couple of 100 meters, they'll swing left in a second, a couple of 100 meters on the boards in the underground station as Martin's now moved through to the front as well. Both of these riders have a slender lead of only half a second, but I tell you what, Martins wasn't going to be given any quarter there. Vujasan now moves through to the front as everybody tries to move through to get themselves into a good position up this horrible little climb which is coming up. I can almost feel the lactate in my legs now, and I'm sat down commentating. They swing right, it kicks upwards, and this is this 12-13% climb. It's only 50 meters or so, but this is where it starts to kick up. Here it is. This is vile, this bit, Hannah.
It's cruel, isn't it? It's cruel because you've just done Foxhill. You've descended where you've been freewheeling, essentially, down Box Hill, down the other side of the ascent. And so sometimes that lactate remains in the legs, and then you're straight into the underground on that short, steep kicker. It's brutal, isn't it? And again, Coalition wanting to try and kick things on up towards the front. And for Yasin, they've come here with a game plan today. I really think they're wanting to try and take control early. They're currently second overall in the series, Matt, and I think they're not comfortable in that position. They want to regain the pole position.
They certainly do. Look at the power here. Since you've been talking, this man hasn't dropped below 600 watts. That was a clear, decisive attack, and unsurprisingly, he's been given a lot of power-ups. Vujasan still hovering just under 600 watts. He's been joined by his teammate from Coalition Alpha. Well, Kaminsky and Vujasan now have a lead over Martins of Toyota, who's at 3 or 1.5 seconds behind. Then the rest of the group at 3.5 to 4 seconds behind. So what an interesting little move here by both of the riders from Coalition Alpha. Certainly didn't expect them to do that, but that was a clear, preordained strategic attack, that's for sure. 2 riders from Coalition Alpha out in front, but they've got a slender lead here, 3.5 seconds. Great to see this aggressive style of racing now.
It's brilliant, isn't it? And when you see the speed that they were just travelling at, 54 to 56 kilometres per hour, but a strong effort there from Martin Mertens, the German rider, to bridge across at that point and also sense the danger of a duo. I think also a very smart tactic for one team to attack as a duo, because it certainly gives you the strength over your rivals, but crucially, you know you're going to work together. And this is all about amassing as many points, because it's a scratch race, as possible. As Meerding of Beast Mode powered by Rose has also been able to jump his way across. 2 Germans, a Polish rider and a Belgian, and it all comes back together. I don't think it's going to settle here, though.
No, it's not. That was a good little move. And at the evolution of racing on ZWIFT over the last few years, as these riders get more and more experienced, I think what we've seen is more riders very much like in the real world. I think there are parallels, trying different things. We used to see the bunches stay together for a bit longer. Now the racing is far more unpredictable. Lots of riders willing to attack. And look at that, the anvil has been dropped on this very slight downhill section. Not using the anvil on the descent of Fox Hill, but this is a little drop down. We've just been through, we're just coming back inland into the city here. And it's Gottwald of the Toyota Elite Cycling Team and then Planterer of Hexagon also closing the gap, who's also dropped an anvil at the same time. Great to see a bit of an unorthodox deployment of that power-up.
This is what we like to see, and this is also where the innovation of how teams are racing and trying new things, trying new tactics, not going with perhaps seeing what other teams are doing on the descent and thinking, oh, well, I best use my power up here because I might get distanced or I need to try and get some respite. But that's interesting from Gottwald just then. Van Diemen, he's tried to jump away here, led by Anna Delana, their sports director in the virtual team car. Here is the Dutchman. Turgles is very animated. He's very active, isn't he? He's coming off the back of a very strong road racing season. And I think he's carrying a lot of that strength into this Grand Prix now.
Of course, he's a very talented rider indeed. Top 10 on the final stage of the Tour of Britain. 15th place overall against some of the finest opposition out there. Wout van Aert, of course, took that race, giving you an indication of the quality of Turgles, but Pim van Diemen as well. Been around for a few seasons, racing on the Zwift platform, and is a versatile rider. Has won some big races and has tried to go clear here. Nobody's satisfied to just let the status quo happen. Riders constantly accelerating off the front. Turgles goes clear as well. Havok tries to close the wheel, but they're trying to be disruptive here. They don't want anybody to get a free ride, and it looks like they're trying to make almost every single metre of this 29.3 kilometre race hurt as much as possible. This is far more attritional than I thought it would be. Really good to see. 16.4 Ks to go, and not too long before we pass through the finish line and then commence one more lap, and that means one more ascent up Fox Hill. But still plenty of riders in the mix, but I think already we've seen a few casualties, and this field definitely isn't the same size, or the main bunch certainly isn't the same size as it was at the start, Hannah.
For many teams and riders here, Matt, I think the problem is they know that the climb over Fox Hill, there's sprinters who are more than capable of making it over that climb. And so what the climbers, or perhaps the rouleurs, the punchers, really need to do here on these flatter roads in London is to really maintain this hard pace, and not let it settle, not let any rider have some respite on the flatter roads, and really keep the power on. And so when you go into the bottom of Fox Hill for the second and final time, there's already riders who are feeling that fatigue, they're feeling the difficulty, and they're really having to dig deep to be able to stay within the bunch and the peloton. And so nobody's really willing to let things rest here, because there's several teams, and we've already mentioned, between Coalition, Alpha, ABA, Synergy, and also with Saris to a certain extent, they're not happy to allow anyone a free ride, but they're also very happy to be the teams making this. This could go terribly wrong for some of these teams, and they've got it all on the line to play for. Let's be fair, for Coalition Alpha and ABA Synergy, they're the top two, and if they start to lose riders because they've done too much work too early, they could lose out big time come the finish, and that's where it's really crucial. That's where the points are.
No, definitely. Yeah, another little power-up has been dropped there. Somebody getting rid of their anvil as we focus on Jasper Paddé.
Ondertussen zijn we voorbij de finish gekomen. Ronde 1 is een feit. Nog een 59 jongens zitten in het peloton. We gaan nu in gestrekte draf naar de tweede maal Fox Hill. En dan gaan we zien hoeveel jongens dat daar nog boven samen zitten.
I know these streets so well. I do ride the London Loop quite a lot, but I don't ride it very often in this direction. So it's quite interesting how a lot of these riders are going to do this sprint. Should it come down to a sprint, I think there will be certainly a group. Will there be a rider clear? We don't know. But we're heading back over the river very shortly. before we head up the climb of Fox Hill again. But there's been another attack off the front. It's Dawson and Turgles that have gone clear now, Hannah.
This is interesting because Dawson, as we know and as we've seen over the last few years, he's been a very animated rider. He, of course, won the Tour de ZWIFT Pro Amateur Invitational race in Bologna in Italy a few years back. And he's a rider who, again, he's not afraid to go on the attack. I think back to Richmond a couple of seasons ago. And again, he was willing to take a big risk. He's very, very strong. He's raced in the UK a lot, IRL in real life, for what was Vitus, the Irishman. And for Wahoo Le Col, again, another team who, are they willing to take big risks here to try and move themselves up in the overall series? Forget about the race win, but really try to get as many of their team and their riders in the top 10, the top 20 as possible. You can see a couple of jerseys there of Wahoo Le Col in that really nice pink and blue fade just on the right hand side of the screen.
Just moving up on the outside, all back together again. Perrin is on the front for Next Esports, powered by Insured in that green. Deepak Elite also represented as they round the corner. And just past the pub here, we're going to go right in a second back into the underground. Thankfully, on this particular way around, they don't have to go up the escalators. Thankfully boarded up as Perrin of Next Esports moves briefly off the front here, heading it back onto the railway tracks before we head back onto the climb for the second time. We saw that little tentative move earlier on last time up. No big attacks, but I'm wondering if several teams will try something. And if anybody does want to try and go clear and split this field, my suggestion is that they start going early. And of course, the utilization of the featherweight power-up this time up is going to be crucial, I think. But the thing is, when will they use it? Right at the bottom to try and force the gaps? Because the higher you get up the climb, Hannah, before any splits occur, the more people have got to try and hold on. Do you know what I mean? So it's demoralizing to go really, really hard early on as Rick Ottomer now moves through to the front. So how tactically are they going to play this one? Who is feeling good? And how the communication's going between these teams. Most of the squads will be in communication with each other, with their DSs. Some of the DSs are riding as well, making it a little bit difficult. But all of these teams, of course, massive part of ZWIFT racing is communication, isn't it, Hannah?
It certainly is, and I think that's something that impresses me so much of some of these riders who are racing, but they're also the sports directors giving out that communication. I mean, you take a look at Matt Gardner of Saris, the rider from the USA. He's been their sports director for a long time, but of course a rider alongside that. And I think the way, being able to do that and being able to talk at the same point and have that communication with your team whilst at, 160, 170, 180 beats per minute and racing here, and also then having to think about, okay, what's the tactic? We need to change our tactic. It's not quite working out for us. But as you say, I mean, that communication aspect between the teams, the riders and the sports directors is just integral. As we see on board with Nicky Hug, he's keeping a really nice cadence here, really consistent, as we start to see a few riders who are already using their feather power up at the back, just trying to get themselves back into the pack. And so already, without any big attacks, Matt, we're starting to see riders suffer.
Already, that was just a drag. They weren't actually technically on the climb. We've just gone through the climbing point as Talbot hits the front again. We've seen him do this before. The riders communicating with each other on Discord. But yeah, a few of the little featherweight power-ups there being used, as you said, just to try and stay in the peloton. And that was as the road was only at 1 or 2%. But as you can see here on this steeper section, this is about 7 or 8%. The average gradient for this climb does include a descent. So the lower slopes of this climb are pretty steep. And it is Talbot now who's pressing on again, as he did before. For Saris, no pins. It's Plantureux of the Hexagon team, who was just trying to get on his wheel here. And there are the stats of David Talbot. 450 watts. That's 7.5 watts a kilo. Unsustainable to the top of the climb, but certainly doing some damage on the lower slopes here as Kaminsky comes through.
It's astonishing how Kaminsky has been able to make so many attacks, Matt, recover and still be one of the riders. And now Lionel Viharsin too, still one of those who is dishing out the pain to their rivals. As we start to see a few more riders, they have to react to those moves. They know there's too many strong riders who potentially are starting to go off the front with Talbot, with Kaminsky. As Paradanes, the rider from Aber Synergy, just moves himself up, the Belgian. There's Ed Morgan, the rider from Wales. He's a real pure climber, Ed Morgan. And so he really wants to try and utilise this part of the course, and especially this part of the climb, to his benefit.
This is interesting here. We've only seen a couple of the featherweight parrots been used so far, as the pace just drops a little bit. I say drops a little bit. There's still Stefan Van Elst kicking out about 350 watts just midway through the pack. But look at the size of this peloton here as we see another flurry of ride-ons. Please get involved. And again, definitely get involved. If you are in a race team and you haven't registered for the ZWIFT Racing League, you still have till Friday the 10th of November to do it. So if this is really whetting your appetite, please do get involved, because up to 2,000 teams take part in each round. And if you have got a squad that are racing on Zwift, make sure you do join this.
Ondertussen zijn we bijna boven op Fox Hill. Nog 37 jongens in het peloton. Onze 5 jongens nog goed mee. De laatste 200 meter van de klim gaan we nu aanvatten. U ziet de feathers.
The speed they're climbing this climb, as now we start to see those power-ups dropped. But still 30 kilometers per hour, the speed that they're climbing Fox Hill here. They're not hanging around. They are not hanging around. This is incredibly difficult speeds, pace, as Turgles has still got something to try and break away. And Talbot's able to react once again. Brian Duffy Jr. of Next Esports also. And now Turgles has made his big move. Then he's dropped the power-up. Turgles is on fire. He's carrying some good form.
He certainly is. As you said, that road condition. He raced well on the Alpe de Zwift last week, narrowly missed out on the win. That win, of course, taken by Martin Martins. But Turgles so aggressive, always at the sharp end, likes to be a protagonist, and certainly likes to make the other riders suffer. And that is what he's doing, still pushing up 7.5 watts a kilo. I can tell you his heart rate, 181 beats a minute. Even higher for Talbot, 192. Here's Brian Duffy Jr. He's got a great little pain cave there, perfectly lit up for us. Cap on as well, but there's some big splits as Duffy just loses the back end of his power up. Where's the world champion? Can't quite see the figure of Bjorn Andreasen in the mix. But I tell you what, the acceleration there by Turgles in particular, Hannah, has really started to rip things apart as we hit that little false flat before the final drag over the top of Fox Hill.
Turgles really in the driving seat, and he's put a lot of riders, and he's still got something left. 425 watts here, just over 6 watts per kilogram. His heart rate 179 beats a minute, and at the moment, look at the way he's able to make a second attack. This is exceptional. As he comes towards the arch, Planteroux is still there, the Frenchman. There's Kirchmeier, the strong endurance rider. However, this is where can the damage be done? Because if they continue to push on here, Matt, there could be some riders who never see the front of the race again. And as you see, they come around this corner, just how small this group is. And riders are in 1s and 2s. Those in a group now, they're in a beneficial position, as opposed to riders on their own. They've got no draft. They've got no riders, no virtual teammates to help them try and come back to a group here.
Exactly. Well, this is where you need to look at who's around you, make a decision based, do I ride with this group? Do I sit in? Do I try and save myself to the sprint? Great use just at the back end of that group of a rider using the Anvil power up to actually get back into contact. He was off the back. Nobody else in the front group has used the Anvil as yet, as I could see, as we look at Planteroux getting in to the Super Tuck, so well in excess of 55 k's an hour for that to be activated. So he can freewheel on his bike at home. In game, he's freewheeling, but he's still keeping a very high speed. Obviously, sitting on the top tube, illegal in the real world, but okay here on Zwift. So the Sukatup over, a brief bit of respite as we continue on down. We're on the descent now of Fox Hill. We've been up Fox Hill, 8.2 kilometers to go now. And there, on the right-hand side, Hannah, is the site of the world champion Bjorn Andreasen in the rainbow band, safely ensconced in this group of around 20 to 25 riders.
Smart riding, very, very wise from the under-23 and the current elite world champion in esports from Bjorn Andreasen, because he kept himself all the way up towards the front on the climb.
Nog 23 renners voorin. Terwijl we Plantereux zien in de afdaling, maar dat gaat niet veel opbrengen. Ik vermoed dat we sowieso tot naast het water gaan rijden met deze 23, dat er daar in de tunnel lichtjes bergop misschien nog een paar aanvallen gaan komen. Maar de kans is groot dat we gewoon met deze 23 naar de finish gaan. En dan moeten we proberen. We zitten nog met 4 man mee. Enkel Joop Pirot moest een klein gaatje laten. En in de afdaling kun je dat niet meer goed maken. Die zit met een groepje op een seconde of 15. Maar die kan nog altijd rond plek 23 eindigen. Wat nog altijd redelijk goed is voor punten. Dus we blijven goed meedoen. En ik denk dat bijna elke ploeg al wel 1 of 2 renners kwijt is. Vermits er nog maar 23 renners zijn. Ik geef het woord weer even door.
Of this descent and still is maintaining that lead, and what he's going to do is buy himself a little bit of sliding room as we head back into the underground station and up the awful escalators. As I said, it's only 20 or 30 meters long, but you're having to kick out in excess of 12, 13, 14 watts a kilo to stay in the wheels, and Plantereux riding smart, riding strongly at the moment, and he's off the front. He's got a 2.2 second lead over the peloton, containing, as you were saying, Hannah, all of the big hitters. Vujasan, Martins, Duffy is there, Tolbert, Kirkmaier, and the rest. So all of the superstars of esports, of racing on Zwift, are in the mix, and they're bearing down on the Frenchman as we hit the underground station for the final time. 5.8 k's to go, Hannah.
His lead is starting to decrease. However, that's put a lot of pressure on those who are chasing and have been on the front. Look at that, a trio of riders, the trio of Belgians from Aber Synergy, all trying to bring back the Frenchman. They do it successfully, but Plantereux of Hexagon just made their lives very, very difficult. And again, I think that was a perfect example of a rider who is, first of all, physically in great shape. Second of all, incredibly smart and wise, but also that communication between their sports director of when to make big accelerations, where can they use that super tuck and get some respite as they go up the steps in out of the underground. Vujasan, the rider who's putting on the pressure, and Freyet, the rider from the USA, trying to get onto his back wheel here. This was where Vujasan and Coalition Alpha wanted to try and make a move earlier on, and they're doing the same thing again.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look to see who of Coalition Alpha is also in the mix. He's got Kaminsky in that group as well. So Vujasan, as you were saying, Hannah, accelerating just on the edge as we go back over the bridge. 5Ks to go now, primarily flat, but there are some gentle little ripples and undulations as we saw last time through that will take us back to the finishing line, but no more climbing. But as a result of the big accelerations that we saw on the climb, we have a drastically reduced lead group. And one man, again, is the effervescent, the ever-present, the irrepressible Lennart Turgels now, has gone clear. It's 8.3 watts a kilo. The Belgian wants to try and finish this one off on his own. He's opened up a gap of 2.2 seconds. This is good. It's a fellow Belgian, Lionel Vujasan, leading the chase behind.
I'm just trying to take a look down who is in this very select group from Aber Synergy, and I think they've got at least 4 riders within that select group, and so they're in one incredible position right now. And Turgels, there's no stopping him. This must be the 4th or 5th big attack that has done severe damage, and at this point in the race he's more than capable of trying to and being able to, first of all, hold off, and if he does get caught again, he's still got that strength and power to make another attack. Because he's in such good shape and such good form, he's able to recover quicker, and then he can go again. So he's putting riders into a lot of difficulty. Kaminsky makes the junction straight over the top, as is Talbot from Saris in the white and pink jersey. And there is Van Aelst, who's just able to patrol things and just regather for Aber Synergy, the all-Belgian squad.
Indeed, it's Aba Synergy, remember, leading the Zwift Grand Prix in front of Coalition, Toyota next, Esports, and then Wahoo in 5th, Movistar in 6th, but it is Talbot from Saris, who currently sit in 8th place, who has now gone off the front. Again, he's had a good night so far, been playing on the climb a little bit as David Talbot, and a man who's looked good today, went well on the descent of Fox Hill, which is Box Hill. Plantereux now trying to come across the gap, 3.4 Ks to go. This is an interesting little breakaway. Both of these riders now have got a slender lead. In fact, it's a lead, Hannah, that is growing 3 seconds for our 2 leaders now. Talbot and Plantereux, the Frenchman and the American, now out in front on the streets of London, and they've got to start chasing, but the gap is now 3 to 4 seconds, Hannah. This is looking good.
This is looking very, very good, but it's also looking dangerous. However, for those series leaders of Aba Synergy, perhaps they might be quite happy to let some of those teams who are a little bit further down in the series standings try and take away the big points from Coalition Alpha, their nearest challengers in the series. Currently, Saris, they're 8th overall, then with Hexagon, they're 7th overall in the series. And so for Aba Synergy, are they happy to let them go? Does Turgles want not only to score big, but he wants the round and the round 3 win, individual win overall?
It was actually, as you were just saying, that it was Lennart Turgles, Hannah, that brought that group back. As you said, has got that ridiculously deep strength from the road, the sort of rides that he does year in, year out on the road, riding for the team that he rides for. Bingold has meant he's in great condition, but after that little tentative attack, the duo from France and the USA, they are now caught, and it's Martin Martins of Toyota on the front. And another attack straight over the top from the Frenchman going long, 2.2 Ks to go. And the Frenchman from the Hexagon team is on fire, 9.4 watts a kilo as he opens up a slender lead here, Hannah. 2 Ks to go, and he's kicking out some big power here.
Big power, and it's something that he's really able to sustain as well, because we've got roughly 2.5 minutes of racing remaining, and he really thrives in these types of conditions. He's able to maintain a really high power for 3 to 5 minutes. That's where he really comes into his own. As Turgles, once again, this man is astonishing, Matt. 600 watts, closing in on 9 watts per kilogram now, 58 kilometers per hour as he rockets his way through London City. This man is on fire. There's no stopping him.
No, there isn't, and they've got a 5-second lead, so Turgles straight across, so Belgium and France, Aba Synergy and Hexagon, and Hannah with 1,300 meters to go. They've built a lead of 5 seconds. Kaminski desperately trying to chase on the front for Poland, representing the Coalition Alpha team, but these two rods have got together. Turgles in the lead, Plantereux struggling to get into the slipstream of the Belgian, who continues to pile on the pressure. We're just going through the underpass, heading back towards the city here, as Turgles continues to ride hard. You can hardly see this is a drag, but it does go uphill. 1K to go here, Hannah.
Plantereux is coming back to the wheel of Turgles, and we have the duo. 5 seconds is the slender advantage. And has Turgles run out of steam? Has Plantereux timed this one? Because take a look at this from Plantereux. This is astonishing from the Frenchman. Now he makes a big acceleration. It's almost 1 second to Turgles. He's opening up a gap to 6 seconds. Turgles fighting back. This is phenomenal. Plantereux, he's a fighter and he's not giving up.
Well, what an absolute spectacle this is. We've got about 400 meters to go. Zwift Grand Prix, incorporating the Zwift Racing League. The community will be watching on, fascinated by the battle on the streets of London. We've been in Surrey, we've had 2 ascents of Fox Hill. Now we're coming into the closing meters. Plantereux of Hexagon, Turgles of Belgium from Aba Synergy. They've got a 5-second gap on the bunch behind. It's an ever so slightly downhill drag, and there's lots of anvils that have been deployed now. Turgles goes straight over the top of the Frenchman. It's only 3 seconds to the peloton behind. Are they going to be caught on the line? But it looks like the Belgian's going to take it. Turgles takes the win ahead of Plantereux, and the peloton behind been led in, I think, by Abo of Hexagon and Glednes of Movistar. But what a win by Lennart Turgles, knocking on the door for so long, so consistent. And Hannah, what a deserved win there. Turgles takes Zwift.
U zag het, een knappe aanval van Lennart Turgles. Toen we naast het water kwamen, kon het volhouden. Eventjes lastig in die tunnel bergop. Maar hij had een goede compagnon mee met Plantureux. Die rijdt altijd. En ze konden het samen bolwerken tot aan de finish. Lennart die kwam mooi uit de draft. Had ook de aanviel gespaard. Zoals de bedoeling was. En wint hier op een mooie manier. We zien Stefan van Aalst op een mooie 6e plek ook. Dus dat is sterk. Eventjes afwachten wat de rest nog gedaan heeft. We waren nog met 4 man mee, dus dat was goed. Enkel Next. Ik denk dat dat de enige ploeg is die we vandaag moeten vrezen voor de overwinning. Die waren nog met heel de ploeg van voor. Ja, de 5 man. De eerste is wel maar 7e. En de tweede 9e. Dus het hangt een beetje af waar die zich geplaceerd hebben. En wat Jo nog gedaan heeft die dagtervolging. We wachten met spanning. Maar zoals het er nu uitziet. Ja, het moet top 2 toch wel mogelijk zijn vandaag. Als ik zelf moet gokken, gok ik tussen ons of Next voor de overwinning. En de andere ploeg zal dan tweede worden. Voor de rest, Coalition, die gaan normaal wel een dreun krijgen, hoop ik. Die waren maar met 2 nog in de kopgroep. Kaminski wordt dan ook nog maar 16e. Dus die gaan vandaag niet... Jasper Paridaans 11e plek. Mathieu 18e plek. Dus dat ziet er tot nu toe helemaal goed uit. Dan wachten we ook nog eventjes wat Jo nog gedaan heeft, als ze die ook nog gaan laten zien. Die zat net daarachter. Die moest sprinten normaal voor plek 23. Ze gaan dat direct wel tonen, vermoed ik. Maar van wat ik hoor in mijn oortje, zou Jo eerste of tweede bij de achtervolgers geweest zijn. Dan moet die ook nog binnen de top 25 zijn. En dan denk ik dat het toch nog wel kan. Want ik zie Zakner maar 19e en Perren 20e. Dus die zaten wel in de kopgroep, maar die zitten helemaal achteraan. De punten die gaan van 80 tot 1. Ja, Jo Pirot 24e, dus nog heel mooi top 25. Dus dat wil zeggen met 5 binnen de 25. En dan is het eventjes spannend. U hoort mij mijn stem al voor ogen. Ik krijg al koud zweet op mijn rug. En ze kunnen er wel iets van bij Zwift om ons in spanning te houden. Maar volgens mij en mijn water zit het er wel in. Kom op. Laten zien die uitslag. Come on. We zitten allemaal in spanning. Maar sowieso zijn wij of Next. En met de overwinning van Lennart en toch wel iets minder scoren van Next, ook al hadden ze een man meer in de kopgroep, denk ik dat het toch mogelijk moet zijn voor ons. Het zou wat zijn, 3 op 3. Kom op mannen, niet leuteren. Ik geef eventjes nog het woord terug.
They saved the Anvil power-up until the finish line. And so they decided tactically to not use it on the descent over the top of Fox Hill.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And as we say, the community riders who will be racing in the ZWIFT Racing League Season 2, Races 1 and 2 on Tuesday. We'll be looking at that keenly. Of course, looking at the way the tactics played out, looking at the damage that was caused on the climb. We're waiting for our team results. We can't actually give you the full team results until everybody has finished, understandably, because the points are first place, 80 points, down to 80th place, or whoever finishes last, of course, will get 1 or 2 points. So it is a linear point score today, so enormously important that every single member of the team finishes, of course, as highly as possible. But as you were talking about, it's going to be close, isn't it, with Abus Synergy having, as you say, 4 riders inside the top 20, 11th, 18th, 1st, and indeed in 6th place. That's going to put them in a strong position. So I'm certainly not going to call it. My mathematics, Hannah, isn't quite as good enough. It does look as if our very own Nathan Guerra has now finished. We can see him. You can't see him at home, but I can assure you that Nathan Guerra is there picture in picture. He's finished his effort so I wouldn't think it's going to be too long before most of the riders are home. But I did. Let's have a little look at what, before we get the final team results, let's have a look at what's coming up over the next few weeks on Zwift, starting with steering gamification events. And I've seen one of these in real life at Ruler Live just a couple of days ago. It's fantastic. So check out the steering event starting tomorrow with the Repack Rush event and Crit City gamification. And these are a great chance to see, as I said, what Zwift have been working on to make fun competitive experiences with steering. It really is cool. My best description, it's Zwift with a little bit of Mario Kart thrown in the mix. It's absolutely fantastic. The best part of the gamification on Zwift. Also, we have a Z Racing monthly series, Neokyo Nights. Stage 2 of Neokyo Nights starts on Monday with the Twilight Harbour route. And there's still a chance to catch Stage 1, where you get to race and these events are perfect for new. We've got the ZWIFT Racing League, round 2 registration. I was talking about during the race, there's only 1 day left to register the race, to race in round 2 if you want to try out what you saw today. And I hope that today has certainly whetted your appetite. So don't waste any more time. The ZWIFT Games. This is set to become the largest cycling esports event ever held, bar none. Now, the ZWIFT Games are designed to give any cyclist the chance to enjoy fun and challenging virtual competition and to compete alongside thousands of other Zwifters. Now, the ZWIFT Games are open to all, providing an open qualification pathway to the ZWIFT Games Elite Finals and the chance to be crowned overall ZWIFT Games champion. Now, qualification race will take place in late February 2024, so make sure you write this down, with the ZWIFT Games Elite Finals to be held over the first 2 weeks of March in 2024, and the ZWIFT Games will crown men's and women's champions across the 3 medal disciplines, as well as the overall male and female champions. Winners will also take home a share of Zwift's biggest ever prize purse. A lot of coming up stuff there, Hannah, but a lot of very cool stuff indeed.
Lots of stuff going on, and certainly a lot for the elite esports riders, the community, to really get themselves into. And I think when you see, it's very exciting to see what's coming up and how much is coming up, but also, as you just mentioned, the steering gamification that we both saw last week at Ruler Live in London. We saw that with lots of keen fans who were there wanting to try and have a go. That was brilliant. But actually, the ZWIFT Games, which only got announced today, is something that's very, very interesting. And I think there's going to be a lot of riders, now that they've heard that news, they really want to try and get themselves involved with that. Not only because, well, the biggest ever prize purse, fantastic, but also to be a part of the first ever ZWIFT Games, because I think, as you can see...
Ondertussen zijn we nog altijd aan het wachten, in spanning. De reden dat het zo lang duurt is waarschijnlijk omdat de punten gaan van 80 tot 1. Dus iedereen moet binnen zijn voordat ze de rangschikking kunnen opmaken van de teams. Ik ga ervan uit dat dat zo stilaan toch wel het geval zou moeten zijn. Maar we komen zo dadelijk met u terug.
Yeah, it certainly is. And of course, next week on the 16th, we've got the Elite Women racing in Glasgow Crit City in a points race. As you can see, bottom left there, Glasgow Crit City, and that will mirror the race for the ZWIFT Racing League, which will take place the following Tuesday. So for the next few weeks, as the ZWIFT Grand Prix incorporates the ZWIFT Racing League, we'll have 1 race a night, and for the last couple of rounds, we'll go back to the 2 races a night format. So lots to come through the winter months, as we have another look at the solo flying Lennart Turgels taking the win tonight, dropping the anvil at the perfect time. And that just shows that these riders have done their homework on this course. I mean, used to running the other way around, but as you can see, that final little run into the line is almost imperceptibly downhill, but clearly riders have looked at it. And again, we need to reiterate the fact they can't actually practice this. They looked at it and they've made a real strong calculation, haven't they? And so to me, it was a little bit of a gamble. Just if the road, that there it was, both Planterer and Turgels dropped theirs at the same time. And in the end, this man just had too much power, didn't he?
I think that's the key of what you've just said there, Matt. It could have been a huge risk. And I think the fact that both of these riders and both of these teams, crucially, were willing to take a big risk, because this could have gone horribly wrong. They wouldn't have had that respite on the descent like other riders had, their rivals had. But in the end, it worked out for them to use the Anvil power-up at this point in the final few hundred meters. And having not been able to practice it in a pre-race scenario, this is event only using this power-up. And it worked out. I think it shows as well that the top two were the two riders who dropped that power-up at that point. And I think big things to come. I think for Hexagon, they're going to elevate themselves exponentially after that performance this evening, because it wasn't just Plantereau, it was also Sébastien Havot, who was fantastic, Geoffrey Milor, the 30-year-old Frenchman, who was up there in the top 20. So overall, I really think they're really finding their place. They're finding their feet here in this series and in this Grand Prix.
Yeah, I certainly think they've got a good chance of moving up, subject to confirmation, of course. Let's have a chat with Nathan Guerrero. I think we've given him just about enough time to have a cooling drink, turn on his microphone and dab the sweat from his brow. Okay, Nathan, how was that, mate?
Oh, it was good. I'm happy. I'm really happy to be riding right now. Matt, I don't know if you ever had a back injury from cycling, but like I couldn't cough without extreme pain for the last 2 weeks, really, wow. And so I haven't ridden the bike for 2 weeks. I'm 1 hour a day for the last 5 days or so. Yesterday, it was midnight. I got on the bike because it was like late. I had the kids. And, classic Zwift, Dad's Zwifting, Dad's inside riding trainers. And all of a sudden, Team Italy's like, we don't got a full roster. I'm riding up Autopi Mountain at like tempo. Like, are you kidding me? No way. And so I was like, all right, I'll take one for the team and I'll just finish. And then I got out here and, and I guess I was well rested. I had 0 VO2. And that kind of almost like your cells are screaming for oxygen. I had that feeling still. Like I hadn't ridden in a while, but it was a good result. I got points, 68th or something, caught some groups, got into a groove, and it was good fun.
That's good, mate. And what did you think about the Anvil power? Because we saw it used lap 1. Most riders use it on the descent, which is kind of obvious. But then to see it deployed in just an ever so slightly downhill sprint was really interesting.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Actually, I saw the sprint I was watching, and, that was the best move you could have made. Saving it, you don't need it on that downhill. In a large pack, on the big downhill, on Box Hill, you don't actually need it. And so the smart ones know that this is going to be won by 1 kilometer per hour. You got 1 kilometer per hour more than somebody else, and you come by at the right time with that CDA increase, you're going to have meters immediately. So knowing it's a downhill sprint, downhill Anvil, it's a no-brainer. It's stronger than the Aero power-up, in my opinion. And so I'd almost rather take that with a drawn-out sprint like that than the Aero, maybe, because I think the speed gained from that weight is probably going to be more, especially if you're like more of a drag race sprinter, which I think Tugels is. Solid, so solid. Nice job by him. Obviously, the craftiest racer and the strongest racer on the day.
Of course, and again, a lot to these next few rounds, as we've talked about, because it's massively important. We've got the ZRL on Tuesday. A lot of the riders in the ZRL are going to have watched with interest today about how they deploy the power-ups as well.
Yeah, and I think, saving them for the most opportune time. One thing I would say to all ZRL racers real quickly is that it's about the most opportune time and not usually when everyone's just popping them off. Don't use them out of anxiety. Use them out of smarts.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first from Nathan Guerrero. Nathan, go and rest up. Glad to hear your back is okay. Go and get some grub, mate. We'll speak to you soon, buddy. Right. Hannah, I believe, yes, we are. Here it is. I'm going to have to squint because my eyesight isn't so great, but I can see that Abus Synergy have taken it on.
U ziet het achter mij. Ja, ik ga me even nog eens uit het beeld halen. U ziet het. Weerom gewonnen. 345 punten op Hexagon. Next derde, Coalition vierde. Dus we lopen uit. Toyota pas zevende, dus dat is een goede zaak voor ons. 3 op 3. Ja, moet niet gezegd worden zeker wie momenteel de sterkste ploeg is. We zijn nu halverwege. Op naar stage 4. Dat is een ploegentijdrit in Watopia. Dat is een vlakke rit. Het ziet er goed uit. We gaan zo meteen ook nog de tussenstand zien. Dus dit is de daguitslag. En zo meteen gaan we ook nog de tussenstand zien. Maar we zijn tevreden. Hè? 3 op 3. Je kunt dat niet zeggen. Hopelijk houden we het een beetje vol. Maar ja, aan de moraal zal het natuurlijk niet liggen voor het moment. Ploegentijd is iets dat we normaal ook wel redelijk goed kunnen. We moeten daar dan wel Lennart missen. Maar we hebben wel wat andere ijzers in het vuur. Het is een vlakke ploegentijdrit op Watopia. We gaan er... Ik ga ervan uit dat Saris de grote favoriet moet zijn daar, omdat die toch wel gespecialiseerd zijn. En dat is in ons voordeel, want als Saris daar wint, pakken die ook weer de punten weg van onze rechtstreekse concurrenten. We moeten vooral goed consolideren. Top 3 proberen altijd te eindigen. En ik denk dat tweede, derde zeker moet mogelijk zijn, ook daar. Ik wacht nog even af totdat we de algemene stand in beeld gaan krijgen.
Coalition Alpha, only by 2 points, managed to take.
Hij is daar, de algemene stand. Ik laat hem u eventjes zien. Voilà. 70 punten. De punten die dat we eigenlijk al na 2 wedstrijden hadden moeten hebben. Dus normaal gezien was dat nu al over de 100 geweest. 105. Maar we gaan daar niet meer over zagen. Coalition blijft wel tweede. Maar ondertussen wel al op 20 punten. Next zien we dan op 23 punten. En dan Hexagon, die zijn opgeschoven. Die hebben Toyota van het podium getrapt voor de moment. Dus so far so good. Je ziet het, 3 wedstrijden achter de rug, nog 4 te gaan. Wel meegeven dat ronde 7 dubbele punten zijn, dus dat wordt ook wel iets om naar te kijken en goed te bestuderen. Maar we zullen stap voor stap gaan. Eerst naar ronde 4, dat is de ploegentijdrit. En dan zien we na ronde 4 wel verder. In ieder geval, we danken jullie om te kijken. En we danken jullie om voor ons te supporteren. En we zien jullie graag weer terug voor ronde 4 in Watopia voor de ploegentijdrit. Dank u en tot de volgende.
But I know how to lie. I feel feelings that I can't